Incoming transmission.
Welcome to True Spies. Week by week, mission by mission, you'll hear the true stories behind the world's greatest espionage operations. You'll meet the people who navigate this secret world. What do they know? What are their skills? And what would you do in their position? This is True Spies.
I was going up against one of the biggest banks in the world, dirtiest banks in the world, terrorists, drug cartels. You have to remember, wars cost money, and this is how they get money. So this puts me like in the middle of the war. I just sat there and it was like 2 a.m. and I was like, this is a national security issue and this is for the United States of America. You know, I'll do what I have to do.
Episode 58, The Avenger. Our spy is Everett Stern, a commercial spy.
I'm the intelligence director and CEO of Tactical Rabbit, a private intelligence agency. And I'm also running for U.S. Senate here in Pennsylvania.
But in 2010, when this story starts, Everett wasn't a politician or even an intelligence officer. He was just a regular 20-something guy who got a job working in a rundown office cubicle for the banking giant HSBC, doing essentially admin.
I was expecting this massive bank, you know, like with a glass building and this tall, you know, people in suits and I don't know what I expected on Wall Street. But no, this was like some one-story shopping center in Newcastle, Delaware.
And while he was there sifting through bank transactions, he made a shocking discovery. The world's local bank was doing business with some of the world's most wanted criminals.
I ran multiple terrorist names through this system, and we're talking billions of dollars in terrorist and drug cartel money going to terrorist organizations such as Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Qaeda.
It turned out even cartel kingpin El Chapo was moving his dirty drug money through HSBC. And in case you didn't guess, allowing this to happen is illegal. And this 25-year-old compliance officer from Florida wanted to be the one to expose the banking giant's dirty laundry.
The reporter said to me, "Do you want your name on this?" And he said to me, "Everett, if you put your name on this, you understand what's about to happen. You're going to be all over the news and it's going to have disastrous consequences for you." He's like, "I'm not going to lie." Like, he told me straight up. But if you don't put your name on it, it's not going to have credibility and the story's not going to go anywhere. So I told him, put my name on it.
But going up against HSBC risked everything and could have cost him his life. Narcotics are a big business. A 2019 study estimated that the retail value of transnational drug trafficking crime is roughly $650 billion. That's more than the economy of Portugal, Finland, and Croatia combined. So imagine you're a mob boss. You've got millions of dollars worth of narcotics being grown, made, and trafficked across the country and abroad, where they'll be sold on the streets. Drugs go out, cash comes in. But you can't just turn up to a bank with dollar bags full of notes inside. The first thing you'll get asked is, where did all that money come from? You have to clean money of its dirty criminal origins before you use it. We've been here before on True Spies. If you're interested in the murky world of financial crime, check out episode 39, The Money Spy.
Money laundering is the concealment of the source of funds. So if you have a drug dealer, right, or if you have someone working for the cartel, you know, if they go out and buy a Ferrari with that money, the IRS and the government's going to question, where are you getting that money from? So they have to launder it and make it seem legitimate, make it seem real.
They have to make it look like the money they've made has come from a legitimate place in the legal economy.
So one of the key things in money laundering is placement. So what they'll do is they'll go into a cash business, so like a restaurant or something, and they'll put money into that cash business. So if a drug dealer, let's say a cartel member makes $1 million, he'll put $1 million into a restaurant.
Then, when they come to file a tax return for the restaurant, they make fake receipts and payments to get their tax bill down.
They can report that to the government, pay taxes, and it becomes real money. So that's what money laundering is in a nutshell.
But criminals still need to put that money somewhere. To move a vast amount of money around and buy things, what you really need is a bank account. And the criminal bank of choice back in the noughties was HSBC.
The reason why it's the bank for money launderers, drug cartels, and terrorists is because they have the biggest world footprint. So let's say you're banking at Wells Fargo in the United States, and then you want to get money to your cousin in Standard Chartered Bank in Gambia in Africa, right? Wells Fargo does not have a relationship with Standard Chartered Bank in Gambia, but HSBC does. So what would happen is Wells Fargo would send the money to HSBC. HSBC would be the broker, and then they would then send that money to Standard Chartered in Gambia.
But moving nefariously earned money carries huge risks. All banks have anti-money laundering programs to stop criminals.
Now, what happens is you have these anti-money laundering compliance officers who work in the correspondent banking division.
That's the local bank where the money's been deposited.
What they're doing is they're analyzing these transactions to see if they're legit. There's always anti-money laundering laws in the United States that HSBC Bank North America has to follow. The problem with HSBC is that it's so big. There's HSBC in Tehran. There's HSBC in the Middle East. There's HSBC Asia. They're all following different rules and regulations.
For example, in 2002, HSBC bought the Mexican bank Bitel, and in doing so, also bought the bank accounts held by members of the cartels. And when Bitel became HSBC Mexico, those accounts weren't stopped or closed. No additional money laundering protection measures were put in place. And the same officials working for this corrupt Mexican bank were now working for HSBC. The lack of regulation, rules, and corruption meant dirty money transactions were flying through HSBC across the world and not getting checked at any level.
And the thing is that HSBC doesn't want them to be legit. They want the transactions to go through because that's how they make money, right? It's like being a broker on Wall Street. They make money off these transactions.
Some branches were taking in hundreds of thousands of dollars a day in questionable money from certain customers. Then in spring 2010, documents that proved dollars from criminal organizations were being deposited and moved through the bank were leaked to Reuters journalists. US prosecutors alleged that HSBC was intentionally flouting the law.
In 2010, there was a cease and desist order placed on the bank by the US government. And the US government said, if you don't clean up your act within 1 year, we're going to take away your banking charter. And we're going to possibly fine you and put you guys in jail. I mean, it was a pretty serious order.
So how do they go about cleaning up their act?
They have a thing called the alert monitoring system at the time. So anytime there's a suspicious transaction, it generates an alert. And this alert contains information of the originator, beneficiary, the amount.
But at HSBC, before they got their knuckles wrapped, no one was looking into the alerts. They were sitting there unchecked. So to make amends, HSBC promised to create a new department of what they called money laundering compliance officers. Their job would be to look into the massive backlog of automatic alerts that got logged in the system when a transaction involving a suspiciously large sum of money took place. If everything checked out, the compliance officer would clear the alert and record it as a legitimate transaction. If it became apparent the transaction was made by a criminal, the authorities would be notified. Everett Stern was one of the applicants, a young man desperate to take down criminals. A young man who is...
I would say somebody who is very idealistic and very ambitious. I just saw a lot of things wrong and, I struggle with it.
You might be wondering how a man who works for a bank is so idealistic. Well, Everett's sense of justice emerged when he was 16.
I had a very good friend of mine that was actually killed by drug dealers. These two kids that were on drugs, and they were speeding down the road, and they ended up hitting, T-boning my friend, and they killed him. As a result of that, I wanted to make a difference, and I was very upset. And I remember going into this very deep depression after that happened, because it was the loss of my friend and the injustice of it. Because I know my friend, like, he was looking to go to Harvard, and the guy had like straight A's, and he was just such a good person. And I didn't understand how a good person could be killed like that. And then these other people who were these drug dealers and these bad guys they just walked away fine. I didn't understand that concept. So I figured, okay, so I need to do something about it. And I remember I went to the police department and I told them I wanted to be a narc, and I wanted to go after drug dealers and gather intelligence for them.
Astonishingly, the police agreed. This sounds like the plot of a Hollywood movie. Teenager goes after drug dealers who killed his friend. But this was Everett's real life.
My reputation in high school, I was class president and had a very good reputation, and it became very bad because my reputation then became as a drug user and as a drug dealer when I really wasn't. I didn't know it at the time, but I was becoming like a spy. I was playing this dual role.
And from there, Everett wanted to become a fully fledged spy. He was in business school when he applied to the CIA.
I'll never forget, I had to meet the CIA on February 14th of 2006. And my girlfriend at the time, that was Valentine's Day. And I had to meet the CIA in this hotel in Miami. And I couldn't tell her where I was going or what I was doing or anything. So she ended up breaking up with me as a result because, that was the end of Valentine's Day.
But in the end, it didn't work out with the CIA either.
I was eventually rejected. Now, some people don't believe that. Some people believe I really am an operative, but I'm not. But the problem is, the more I say I'm not, the more people believe that I am. But I really am not. I really was rejected at the end.
It was 2010 and the height of the financial crash.
I couldn't get a job, and there was just one job, that HSBC anti-money laundering compliance officer, and I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know what money laundering was. And I just said, screw it, let me apply for it. I was applying for everything. And I just happened to get a call back from HSBC. And I said, Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation sounds good to me.
But little did Everett know what he was walking into.
I flew up to Delaware, and this is where things got weird. Like, I showed up, and it was this, I was expecting this massive bank, like with a glass building and this tall, people in suits, but no, this was like some one-story shopping center in Newcastle, Delaware, and like the people were in jeans and t-shirts, and like it was not a bank. It was very suspicious.
The interview raised more red flags.
The interview was very fast. He just said, "What do you know about money laundering?" And I said, "Nothing." I said, "But if you give me a book and some time, I can read, I can learn about it." He was just shooting questions at me very, very, very quickly. And he was just like, "When did you graduate business school? Do you know about the cease and desist order that we were placed on?" And I was like, "No." And basically every question he asked me about my knowledge about money laundering or anything related to banking, I just didn't know. It was true. I just didn't know that world. I didn't know how to do due diligence.
Sounds like the perfect candidate.
And they hired me. And that was like a huge red flag too, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, So, and that's why they hired me, because I didn't know what I was doing. And that they were hiring everybody else because they didn't know what they were doing.
Now, why would a company that needs to root out suspicious and potentially criminal activity in its midst hire people who have no idea what they are looking for?
They had such a backlog, and they had to clear the alerts and show the regulators that all these alerts are being cleared.
If the alerts over suspicious transactions get cleared as legitimate and no suspicious activity is technically found, then HSBC can keep its banking charter and clear its name. No fines, no criminal charges, nothing. But in truth, buried within those alerts were transactions made by terrorist groups, mobsters and drug lords. And they'd happened on HSBC's watch.
They 100% wanted people who did not know what they were doing so they could defraud the United States government to get as many transactions cleared as fast as possible. And the reason why, they ended up having this facility in Newcastle, Delaware, is because the regulators are all in New York. So the regulators aren't going to come down to Newcastle, Delaware. I never saw a regulator in my life.
It was a case of just clear the alerts as quickly and as quietly as possible. But as we now know, Everett is a man who takes pride in his principles and has a little bit of spy training. So once he suspected that HSBC were potentially trying to cover up the money laundering going on in their bank, he began to investigate.
What I did was, on my second day, I went to University of Delaware and I checked out a whole bunch of books on money laundering and terrorist financing. I would get up 2 hours, 3 hours early, and I started reading and teaching myself and understanding what was happening. And then I started getting a feel of what these people were doing was wrong. And then I noticed in the actual transactions that I started seeing that I needed to escalate, that these were high-risk national security issues. And I tried certain tactics, actually. There was a shipping company out of Canada, and so much money was going to this.
Everett suspected nefarious activity. So how to investigate? He hadn't actually been given any proper training on what to do when you find a transaction that could potentially be criminal.
If they had a decent-looking website, just a good-looking website, PDF it, attach it, and then write a report saying the money is going from a medium risk country to a high risk country, but the risk is mitigated because they have a good looking website. That was it. We're talking Google searches here.
The name of the game was just clear all the alerts, make it look like action is being taken.
You had to do it as fast as possible, and you had to clear at least 30 alerts a day. So they started putting number limits on it. And they also had competitions who could clear the most amount of alerts in a week.
So with this shipping company Everett had found in Canada, he had to get creative and come up with his own test.
I called the company in Canada, and I pretended to be an arms dealer, actually. I said, look, I need to get bullets into Iran and into Tehran. Can you get me a shipment of 223 bullets, for the AR-15, into Tehran? Can you do this for me? And they're like, yeah, no problem.
Okay, so definitely illegal activity going on here.
We're talking national security issues. And I was like, it's crazy. So, I'm off the phone. I tried writing a suspicious activity report, which would go to the government.
Which, remember, is his job. But management were not impressed.
They said to me, Everett, don't ever make a phone call like that again. You can't pretend to be other people.
Another red flag that something just wasn't right with this whole operation. To avoid further scrutiny from his bosses, Everett took his investigation underground, let's say. And he realized that this shipping company was just the tip of the iceberg. He started to wonder how these dirty transactions were able to go through without being stopped.
I was trying not to be too suspicious about it. So I remembered once I stayed home, they allowed you to work remotely from home, which was a fatal mistake on their part, because I just went home sick and just analyzed all their stuff. I asked them for access to this system called CAMP. It's the Customer Alert Monitoring Program. It allows you to go through every single transaction that was ever done at HSBC, every wire. I basically BS'd them and was like, look, I want to learn all the systems. But no. I knew what this CAMP thing did. I found out from somebody else. It had all the information in it. So what I did was I ran multiple terrorist names through this system, and we're talking billions of dollars in terrorist and drug cartel money, mostly terrorist money going towards terrorist organizations such as Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Qaeda. It was incredible. And when I saw that, I didn't understand how it was possible.
Perhaps you're wondering how he knew which names to run through the system. Well, the US government puts out a list of companies and people that have sanctions on them.
People we can't do business with. This is Russian mobsters, KGB, all different types of people. terrorists, drug cartel members, just any bad guy you can possibly imagine. They put out this list, and what happens is HSBC is supposed to take this list, and then any wire that comes in that matches the name is supposed to be blocked. But what I saw in the camp system was that the wires were going through. And I didn't understand this, and I couldn't figure it out, because allowing money to be wired to an OFAC sanctioned entity, that is jail time.
So how were these transactions or wires getting through to the system? HSBC has a wire filter that is supposed to stop any transactions that come from companies or people on that sanction list. But somehow they were getting through.
But then I noticed in the wire filter, it just caught my eye. I don't know how I caught this. So one of the big companies that they always talk about was this company called Tajiko, which is owned by the Tajain brothers, which are these financiers of Hezbollah. Tajiko, Tajco, is the name of their company, right? It's a construction company, but it's really a front for Hezbollah. But it was spelled Taj.co or Taj-co. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, why are these dots and dashes there? So I asked somebody, how does the wire filter work? And they said it has to be an exact match. So I was like, oh my God, that's how they're doing it.
The wire filter is kind of like a fishing net. Any account name that exactly matches the names on the government sanction list gets stopped. But anything that doesn't passes through. By changing just one character in their account name, criminal organizations were able to send millions of dollars of dirty money around the world without being stopped.
That's how they're laundering and getting money to terrorists, is they're creating a non-exact match. So if it's Taj.co, it's not a match. So the payment will go through. And that's how the fraud happened.
If it sounds crazy that it would be that easy, remember this is how Everett got here in the first place. HSBC got caught out for making a lot of money off of criminal transactions. The bank benefits when it brokers large sums of money. This was the evidence of how they were doing it.
And that's what the government didn't know.
Everett had what he needed to blow the whistle on HSBC.
It was November 12th. I was late to work the next day and I got yelled at for being late to work. But I was tossing and turning in bed because I was like, this is going to change my life completely. And I don't know how, but this is going to change my life. Like if I send this email to the CIA, it's all over.
HSBC is worth almost $3 trillion. Their glistening buildings are monoliths on every major skyline. They have 40 million customers in 64 countries, brokering transactions for global corporations, governments, and, as we know, terror organizations, mafia, and cartels. Everett is David, and HSBC is Goliath.
Going up against one of the biggest banks in the world, dirtiest banks in the world, terrorists, drug cartels. You have to remember, wars cost money, right? And this is how they get money. And if you cut off the money supply, we'll win. So this puts me like in the middle of the war. I just sat there and it was like 2 a.m. and I was like, I just have to self-sacrifice and do it for the greater good. This is a national security issue and this is for the United States of America. And, I'll do what I have to do.
Would you risk everything to take on a giant? You know the repercussions and what's at stake for you. An email threatening to take down one of the world's biggest banks landed in the inbox of the CIA. Sender, Everett Stern. Everett continued to send emails detailing HSBC's money laundering violations, and presumably, emails were being sent back to him.
I can't get into how I was doing things, but I worked very hard over the following year to stop terrorist transactions. And I'm not going to say as a spy, but I did what I had to do as a citizen trying to do the right thing.
And then Everett went public.
There were 2 critical moments. There was the moment where I sent emails to the CIA, but then there was also the moment when the reporter said to me, do you want your name on this? And he said to me, Everett, if you put your name on this, you understand what's about to happen. He's like, you're going to be all over the news and it's going to have disastrous consequences for you. He's like, I'm not going to lie. Like he told me straight up. He's like, this is not going to be good for you. But if you don't put your name on it, it's not going to have credibility and the story is not going to go anywhere. So I told him, put my name on it.
By this point, Everett had left HSBC.
Well, at first it was very bad. Very, very bad. Because the bank denied it at first, right? They denied my allegations. I even had family members, they were like, and people, close friends, Everett, you're crazy. Like, you're saying like the FBI is helping you. You were passing information to the CIA. Remember, nobody knew my background or anything. And I mean, really, imagine if you didn't know my backstory, me telling you all this, back then when I was 25 years old, you'd think this kid's nuts. He's off his rocker, right?
And things went from bad to worse.
I was devastated after this because, well, one, I ended up being blacklisted from the financial community. I ended up not being able to get a job. I moved into this, I wasn't in witness protection, but it was like this the FBI was watching me very carefully. I mean, I was living in this 400 square foot apartment and it was like a studio. It was just, sleeping on a cot. I didn't even have a bed. I couldn't afford a bed. And I had this plastic fold-out table I got from Walmart, those plastic conference tables. I got that as my desk.
But someone did show him some kindness.
My name came out and I was becoming famous, but I didn't have any money. It was very weird. It's very weird becoming famous, but you don't have any money. So I'll never forget, I went down to P.F. Chang's, and guess who was the nearest restaurant? And I said, listen, I have no money left. My dad had cancer and I didn't have money to support me. I was eating hot dogs and peanut butter and jelly for like a month. And then I went to P.F. Chang's and I was like, listen, I don't know how to wait tables. I have an MBA. Here's my picture in Rolling Stone magazine. They did a whole feature on me. Please read it. Help me. I need a job. I don't know how to wait tables, but I'll learn. And the guy looked at me like I was crazy, and he took the Rolling Stone magazine, and he called me the next day and said, come down to P.F. Chang's, and he goes, you did the right thing. We're going to make sure we help you. And I'll never forget that guy. And when I hit it really big, I'm going to make sure that guy is sitting on a beach somewhere for the rest of his life, because he saved me. They even stayed late with me multiple times to teach me how to hold the tray properly, because I kept dropping food, and I was probably the worst waiter known to man.
He was waiting tables by day, but at night, Everett was sitting at his plastic folding table, writing. He was putting together a damning intelligence report on HSBC enabling money laundering and assisting state-sponsored terrorism and drug trafficking. The report was submitted to the US Senate. The Senate committee found that this global bank was enabling billions of dollars of dirty money to run through the American financial system. And evidence at the hearing showed that HSBC executives knew exactly what they were doing. An internal email revealed that one executive even wrote, "We are allowing organized criminals to launder their money." Criminals like the notorious Sinaloa drug cartel in Mexico, responsible for hundreds, if not thousands, of deaths. At the hearing, HSBC didn't deny the evidence, instead saying they were trying to do better. Based on the evidence Everett had found, the bank was fined a record $1.9 billion. It was some vindication for the man who lost everything to expose the bank.
Whistleblowers and people fear is you don't have support until you're acknowledged. So it takes tremendous strength.
But it didn't feel like justice.
I remember, though, when the fine came out, the $1.92 billion fine, when they announced that, I was devastated because I wanted someone in jail. I mean, they said there was a deferred prosecution agreement. Nobody was going to jail. $1.92 billion was 5 weeks of their profit. I mean, what are you kidding me? I mean, it wasn't a punishment, and it set a precedent for every bank out there to just be able to do what they want.
To Everett, the penalty was inconsequential. He felt dangerously helpless.
I was very depressed because I worked so hard to defend the United States, and it meant nothing. My efforts went nowhere. And I felt like a complete failure, and I also felt like I failed the United States because I took this very personally, that I didn't get anybody in jail. But I remember, When the deferred prosecution agreement came out, I was sitting at my desk and I'll be transparent with you. I was sitting at my desk and I was literally holding a 9mm, like I had a gun, and I was going to kill myself.
But an unlikely savior came to the rescue.
I have a pet rabbit. I love rabbits because they're innocent creatures and they hop around and eat vegetables and, all about the defensive goodness. So they're kind of like my spiritual animal, I guess you could say. But I'll never forget, my rabbit kind of hopped up in my lap and I was like, who's going to feed the rabbit? And that's what saved my life.
Keen to turn things around and move forward with everything he'd learned and experienced gathering intel on HSBC, Everett decided to save up and set up a private intelligence agency of his own. He called it Tactical Rabbit.
Tactical Rabbit is a private intelligence agency, so we're not a PI firm. So there's a big difference between a PI firm and a private intelligence agency. So we do real intelligence operation. Everything that the CIA does, basically, we do. We function as a private CIA. The main function of Tactical Rabbit is national security.
How does that work?
I have a team of former CIA field operations officers, former NSA, military intelligence. The main function of Tactical Rabbit is national security. We're actively engaging targets, creating shell companies, fake websites. We're doing things that no other company is doing. Everything we do is legal, of course. We have a whole legal counsel, make sure everything we do is by the book. But we are operating internationally right now, 10 different countries, and we are going after the bad guys.
When Everett started Tactical Rabbit, he was working as a waiter in a Chinese restaurant with no money to his name. So how did he manage to get former operatives to work with him?
I was like, how do I get these people to join me? How do I create a fighting army? That's what I wanted. I didn't want to form a company. I wanted a fighting army to defend justice in the United States. And then I just built this website and I went on LinkedIn, and then I had one person come to me and reach out to me.
It turned out that his newfound fame wasn't such a bad thing after all.
It just blossomed into this massive thing. And, if you build it, they will come. And it's a very true thing. You just have to have the guts and just do it.
They take private clients in corporate cases as a way to help fund their endeavors. But the main aim of their intelligence gathering operations is to gather intel on those threats to national security and pass on information to the FBI and CIA.
So what we do is we have to gather intelligence on organizations that domestic insider threats, and then there's also different terrorist organizations.
And one recent operation exposed a white nationalist organization in Florida.
Right before Biden's inauguration, we got a tip that there was an insider threat where there was possible danger against President Biden and Kamala Harris. So when we first looked at their website, we were just like, oh, yeah, these guys are just, they're not that extreme. We thought maybe they're like these three rednecks in a trailer or something. We didn't think much of them. But then when my former NSA officers started looking into them, we saw that their IP address, it just kept changing. Their website wasn't static. And then we started engaging and, going through their code, what they were doing. And even their coding on their website was just extremely advanced. This was not a normal organization. And then we started digging into the people, and we started, going into their networks, and we started targeting them like we would, like a cell for Hezbollah or Hamas or something that was in the United States. We started looking at them as a domestic terrorist organization. We were working so hard because Biden's inauguration, I think, was 2 weeks away, and we felt these guys could make a move.
Everett can't reveal much more as this group is now under investigation by the FBI, in part due to Tactical Rabbit's reconnaissance.
When you expose someone like this group, it makes them move, it makes them change. They took down their website, they started, moving different locations, they went into hiding. So it disrupted them and it prevented them from making the attack.
Everett says his company have good ties with both American intelligence agencies.
We try to pass as much information to the FBI as possible,
but acknowledges that some agents disagree with their methodology.
But I think everyone agrees that I have the right motives and the right nature behind it.
And on a personal level, Everett is putting himself in danger. by being the face of this private intelligence agency, and now running to be the Republican senator of Pennsylvania.
I'm definitely on their radar with, Russian intelligence, the Nazis. I mean, the ISIS posted a target photo of me. I've probably pissed off every group known to man. I mean, but that shows I'm doing my job. So the risk to me is very high. There's a very high threat level. With me, I have to walk around with security a lot of times. I was told to wear a bulletproof vest on the campaign trail.
But even the threat of bullets doesn't deter him.
Justice can happen, and I believe corruption can be ended. There's something inside of me where I know if I'm fighting, I can win the fight. Because in the Bible, David versus Goliath, David wins.
I'm Vanessa Kirby. Join us next week for another secret operation with True Spies.